with our colleagues from UNHCR and UNICEF. We have the pleasure to welcome Angèle Dikongue Atangana, who is the UNHCR representative for the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and she is connecting with us from Kinshasa. And we also welcome Grant Lieti, UNICEF DRC representative, also from Kinshasa. We are going to listen from them on the grave concerns of their organization over the humanitarian toll on civilians in Eastern DRC. So I don't know who wants to start, maybe Angèle. Welcome, we listen to you.
Thank you. Good morning to all. And yes, it is a great pleasure for us to be able to speak to you from Kinshasa, where I am with Grant, my colleague of UNICEF, and a good number of colleagues in the room. Really, this is to say that we, UNHCR, in the DRC and UNICEF, the UN Refugees Agency, and the UN Children Fund, are greatly alarmed by the escalating crisis that has been unfolding once again in the eastern part of the DR Congo. Violent clashes between non-state armed groups and government forces have forcibly displaced more than 450,000 persons in the last 6 weeks in Rutshuru and Masisi. This is in the North Kivu province. The severity of the crisis is further exacerbated by the limited humanitarian access to those in dire need, primarily attributed to the obstructions of major routes. Cut off from essential humanitarian aid is really threatening approximately 200,000 internally displaced people who are stranded and facing challenges in accessing life-saving assistance. Tragically, an additional 100,000 are also likely to face similar fate, restricted access in the coming days if the current trends of the conflict continue. The disruption of roads not only impedes the delivery of critical humanitarian aid, but also heightens the vulnerability of displaced populations, leaving them without essential resources and protection. Although UNHCR has built shelters in the recent months for more than 40,000 people near the provincial capital of Goma and distributed more than 30,000 kits containing basic requirements, including tarpaulin, cooking stoves, cooking pots, and blankets for families in need, the international community must really urgently address the obstruction humanitarian access to ensure that the nearly 7 million people who are affected by conflict in the east of DRC receive urgent help. Colleagues, the gravity of the crisis is underscored by the distressing situation for displaced people in Sake, southern part of the province from Goma, who are arriving by the tens of thousands in the town, 35 kilometers west of the provincial capital, Goma, having first been displaced in zones where aid was not accessible. They describe harrowing choices to UNHCR's protection monitors, including the heart-wrenching decisions to risk death, to feed starving children, and the exposure to rape for women while fetching firewood. Colleagues, the stories are underscored by statistics, with protection monitoring reports collected by UNHCR as partners in October, showing over 3,000 reported human rights violations in October alone, nearly double the figure from September 2023. Rape and arbitrary killing feature prominently in these results, along with kidnappings, extortion, and the destruction of property, illustrating a deeply concerning pattern of abuse inflicted upon civilian population. Grant,
Thank you, Angèle. This intensification of violence is having a devastating impact on the lives of children who are facing a number of serious violations of their rights. The number of overall violations reported against children between July and September this year, recorded by child protection partners, saw a sharp increase of nearly 130% to more than 7,500 cases. And this is on top of the already high number of violations reported for the first half of the year. The UN verified grave violations for the first half of this year were 40% up on the same period in 2022. Children are increasingly vulnerable to recruitment and use by armed groups, with more than 450 verified cases from July to September, again a 50% increase compared to the first half of this year. UN partners and humanitarian actors are urgently scaling up the humanitarian and protection assistance to tackle the urgent needs stemming from overcrowding and inadequate shelter in impromptu sites in the eastern provinces, where people have limited access to food and clean water. The cholera outbreak continues, highlighting the limitations of the humanitarian aid currently available, and has just extended to the location of Kichanga, currently in a disputed zone. Since June this year, UNICEF has reached nearly 700,000 people with life-saving and life-changing assistance, including clean drinking water and sanitation, child protection, essential household items, health, nutrition, and education services. With the recent deterioration of the security situation in North Kivu, UNICEF and its partners accelerated processes to identify, document, and formally support family tracing and reunification in the Masisi and Rutshuru territories in October, through the increased presence of trained staff and the setting up of listening centers, providing vital psychosocial and mental health support. UNHCR and UNICEF urgently call on all actors in Eastern DRC to stop the violence that is taking an enormous toll on the civilian population and children in particular. We stand united in our commitment to alleviate the suffering of those affected by the crisis, but the international community must act swiftly and generously to ensure that sufficient resources are mobilized, and also to double down on diplomatic efforts to end this conflict. The humanitarian response in DRC is significantly underfunded. For 2023, the Coordinated Humanitarian Response Plan, which includes both UNHCR's and UNICEF's financial needs, is set at $2.3 billion. But as of today, it is only 37% funded. Angèle, back to you.
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, if you allow me 2 words of conclusion. If I were really to this talk, I would say, you know, Grant and myself sitting here are parents. And I can tell you, when I was coming here, my children decided not to come. Why? Because they felt this place was not good enough for them. At first, I tried to convince them, but I couldn't. But I promise you, more than 18 months down the line, I think they were right. So here am I sitting, a mother of 4 children, thinking that the place is not good enough for my children. If that is what I believe, why shall I think that especially the eastern part of the country where we have been describing what is going on is good enough for any child on this world. Really, my answer is it is not good enough. So children in DRC are just like any other children worldwide. They are like Ukrainian children, they are like Gaza children, they are like children in France, in the US, you name it. So they have hopes, they have dreams. Madam Chair, I promise you, the stories of those children are heartbreaking. I am calling UNICEF and UNHCR here, we are calling for a stop, a halt to what is going on, because that is the solution. In as much as we can continue to run after the symptoms, the true solution is the return of lasting peace. We need world political commitment to this aim. I thank you for your kind attention.
And I thank you, both of you, for this briefing. And indeed, we hear your call. I'll open now the floor to questions. First in the room, if there is any. By the way, just to tell the journalist, Marixi is also online, and Eugene, so maybe if they can think about sending the notes of the two speakers to the journalist. Online, I see that Peter Kenya has a question. Peter is our correspondent of All Africa Media. Peter.
Yeah, thanks for the briefing. This part of the Congo doesn't seem to be new to these type of conflicts. Is this a new surge in the conflict? And can you describe who is responsible for arming these groups? Are they small groups, or are they bigger groups that are armed from somewhere else? Because something must be fueling this conflict. Are you able to pinpoint who is responsible for that? Thank you.
Don't know who wants to take this, Angel or Grant?
I can try to take it. Thank you very much, Peter. Yes, indeed, the conflict is not new. And as far as I'm concerned, I have been working with the UN for nearly 3 decades, since '94. And ever since I've been working with the UN, the eastern part of Congo has never known peace. And so really, yes, and this is even what is more heartbreaking. Since the beginning of this conflict, it is believed that between 10 million and 12 million persons have perished, have died. So my question here is, how many more deaths are we awaiting to start thinking that this has to come to a halt? Now, you are asking me whether I can pinpoint who is arming, who is responsible. That's not my role. Frankly, as a humanitarian, we are sitting here, Grant and I, we are running behind the symptoms. We are present on ground to try to alleviate the suffering of these people. The head of MONUSCO, Madame Bintou Keita, has been doing a great job here informing the Security Council, that entity which is responsible for peace and security of the world, according to our UN, the UN which is all of us, by the way. So everybody knows what is happening, who is doing what. It is not the purview of us sitting here to pinpoint at somebody. We are only asking for lasting peace to be worked upon with clear political engagement, commitment, so that this part of the continent might also know peace. This is what we are asking for. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Catherine Fiancon, our correspondent of France 24, French channel.
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you to Madame and to the gentleman of UNICEF. I'd like to both to say a few words in French because it will be useful for French media, as DR Congo is the largest French-speaking country in the world. And also, je voudrais également vous poser une question justement concernant votre appel. Comme vous l'avez indiqué, cela fait plusieurs décennies que l'Est de la République démocratique du Congo ne connaît pas de paix. Est-ce que vous pensez que le départ de la MONUSCO qui devrait s'opérer dans les quelques mois à venir va vous permettre de mieux travailler ou au contraire va diminuer le peu de visibilité que vous avez? Comment est-ce que vous voyez les choses? Je vous remercie.
Je vous remercie.
Angèle, Grant?
Yes, sorry. Je vous remercie, madame, et nous apprécions l'intervention de France 24 et le fait que vous diffusiez quelquefois des images. Ma demande est que vous en diffusiez davantage. Je regarde la télé, votre chaîne, ces jours-ci, il y a tout sur Gaza. Je sympathise, j'ai le cœur brisé à cause de ce qui se passe à Gaza et à cause de ce qui se passe en Ukraine et partout dans le monde. Mais j'aimerais vraiment que votre chaîne regarde aussi davantage ce qui se passe à l'est du Congo, parce que je vous assure, ça n'a aucun degré moindre de gravité si on veut comparer. Comparaison n'étant pas raison. Mais oui, pour MONUSCO, je dois dire que MONUSCO jusqu'ici a fait beaucoup de travail. Quand je parle de MONUSCO, je veux toujours rappeler aux uns aux autres, c'est comme si vous regardez un verre à moitié plein et à moitié vide. Moi, j'aime bien regarder la partie qui est à moitié pleine. Je vous promets que MONUSCO a fait beaucoup dans le sens de mitiger, si je peux dire comme cela, les peines, les souffrances des personnes qui sont en déplacement forcé. Et je sais qu'ils ont beaucoup aidé les humanitaires que nous sommes pour pouvoir faire notre travail. Alors oui, leur départ, que m'inspire leur départ de la RDC? Leur départ, je sais que dans l'accord qui a été signé cette semaine d'ailleurs entre la chef de MONUSCO, Madame Bintou Keïta, que j'ai nommée tantôt, et le gouvernement de la RDC, dans cet accord-là, il y a eu un effort de faire en sorte que le départ soit phasé et responsable, qu'il ne soit pas abrupt. C'est ce que nous demandons en effet pour que ce départ-là ne crée pas encore des vides sécuritaires qui vont faire que les multiples groupes armées non étatiques qui sévissent dans le pays, qui sont plus de 260, hein, si j'en crois les chiffres actuels, ne reprennent pas de plus belle le flambeau pour les violences. Donc, en effet, nous poussons la partie des agences, fonds et programmes des Nations Unies, quand nous intervenons dans le processus de transition, nous disons il faut que cela soit phasé, il faut que la protection des civils soit véritablement prise en compte parce que nous voyons déjà, même avec la présence de MONUSCO, il y a beaucoup d'attaques sur les civils et nous voulons que leur départ ne soit pas une occasion pour augmenter ces attaques-là. C'est notre plaidoyer, mais évidemment, cela dépend beaucoup de la communauté internationale et de comment l'on va accompagner ce processus. Je vous remercie.
Oui, en effet, comme Angèle l'a dit, Catherine, et comme tu sais sûrement, le 21 novembre, les chefs de la mission de l'ONU pour la stabilisation en RDC à MONUSCO, Madame Keïta, et le vice-premier ministre congolais, ministre des Affaires étrangères et de la francophonie, Monsieur Christophe Lutundula, ont co-signé une note sur les retraites accélérées, progressives, ordonnées et responsables de la MONUSCO de la DRC, contenant un plan et un calendrier pour le désengagement complet de la mission du pays. Tu te souviendras sûrement du fait qu'en septembre, il y avait eu une demande de la part du président d'accélérer les retraits de la MONUSCO et à partir du mois prochain, enfin donc d'octobre, et donc c'est à cause de ça, ces accords ont été discutés et puis cet papier a été signé. Et si tu veux plus d'informations là-dessus, on peut te l'envoyer. Alors, je retourne à ma plateforme. Je ne vois pas d'autres questions. Pardon, John Zarocostas, France 24 aussi, mais English Channel.
Yes, good morning. I also wear the hat of the Lancet. My question is to the representative of UNICEF. I was wondering, sir, if these disturbing figures that you just mentioned, if the head of UNICEF, Ms. Russell, mentioned them during the Interagency Standing Committee Principals meeting in New York on the 7th of November, if that was discussed and what was decided by the heads of agencies there on going forward.
Thank you,
Brent?
John. Yes, thank you. Indeed, I can confirm that these figures were mentioned by our executive director, Catherine Russell. What is under discussion is, for a number of these protracted crises, agreements are being reached on which agency principle will take a leading role. It turns out that she has that role, for example, in the case of Haiti, and it's under discussion who will be taking on really a role of keeping the visibility and trying to lead the efforts in terms of both mobilizing appropriate resources and also joining efforts on accelerating finding a diplomatic solution to ending this conflict. And if I may, John, I just add a compliment to Angèle's previous point on the departure of MONUSCO. I think looking forward, we need to see this. I mean, as the humanitarian agencies, our work here is to continue to support the communities and the authorities through what is clearly going to be a period of some upheaval. In addition to the departure of MONUSCO, there's also been a request for the departure of the East African Regional Command and East African troops that have been present since earlier this year. And there's also a potential deployment of different troops from SADC, South African Development Region. So all of this is going to mean that the protection of civilians that Angèle was referring to is something we need to be ready to anticipate different scenarios and really work with the authorities and the agencies who are going to stay on the ground to be close, to be bringing our attention to where maybe some acute reinforcement of security is required to avoid the vacuums that Angèle was referring to. Over.
Thank you. I think John has a follow-up.
Yes, thank you. Yes, with reference to the amount funded so far in the appeal for the DRC, I think you mentioned 37%, if I'm not mistaken. That seems to be running at about 10% less than what was funded last year. How does this translate, and how many children will not be assisted in the DRC? And if I'm not mistaken, it's millions of children that require help on the ground.
Grant?
Thank you, John. Indeed, this is of great concern, because what we are being faced with, and this is for all humanitarian agencies in Eastern DRC, is we are being forced to make difficult choices around prioritization. So right now, the way this is translating is that whereas we should really be meeting for anything to do with life saving, whether we're talking about epidemic outbreak, response to acute malnutrition, and providing safe drinking water and sanitation, and we can carry on that list, we should be reaching at least 80% of those children and affected families. As we go through the sectors, we are seeing that in some sectors we are clearly not able to even get to the 50% level. So this is forcing us to make these trade-offs, both in terms of the different types of interventions, but also in terms of the geographic locations. So we are clearly focusing on those areas which are the most vulnerable. Angèle referred to the spontaneous settlements from the new waves. These are very obviously the greatest risk for the likes of disease outbreaks such as cholera. So we divert our efforts to these areas where we see the greatest risk of an epidemic outbreak. But that then means that in the other areas, instead of getting the response to this, also the standard for example, which should be 15 liters of water per person per day, there are places where that is dropping down to between 5 and 10 liters of water per person per day. And that's not an acceptable place to be.
Yeah, dramatic numbers. Thank you very much. I don't see other questions for you, so I'd like to thank both Angel Dikongue Atangana and Grant Leti for briefing us from Kinshasa. As they both said, let's not forget this incredibly difficult situation and conflict. And let's also go now, thank you very much. Let's also go now to another conflict and another difficult, conflict and another difficult situation that we need to spotlight, which is the situation of Afghanistan. We have Xiao Wei Li, the World Food Programme Country Director in Afghanistan. Madam, you're talking from Kabul about the situation of the families that are forced to return from Pakistan to Kabul, to Afghanistan in general. Let's hear more from you on this. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. A few days ago, I was at the Nangarhar border crossing on the road between Peshawar and Jalalabad, where families forced to leave Pakistan arrive in Afghanistan. More than 1 million people will leave Pakistan, and more than 370,000 have already arrived, as UNHCR briefed you a few days ago. The people I met had almost nothing on them and nowhere to go. One woman told me she only had 2 hours to pack up her entire life and leave with her family. Some women had to leave without their husbands, who have been detained by the police. So the women had to find their way here without the breadwinners of their family. Families traveling and arriving at the border only pack some bread for food for their journey and arrive exhausted, hungry, and in need of immediate support. They are forced to return to Afghanistan at the worst possible time. Everyone I spoke with told me they did not know how they were going to survive this coming winter. Harsh, unforgiving, and freezing, winter is a countdown to 0 in Afghanistan. It's a time when communities are forced to it's a time when communities are forced to burn through all their food and resources and have to start over again in spring. These families coming back did not cross the border with food stocks to help them get through the winter. There are no open arms for these families. Many of them have not heard back from their relatives in Afghanistan. Those who did were told that there is no space for them or that there was too little to share. Many have fled violence in Afghanistan years ago and have nowhere to return. They return as the country still reels from the multiple earthquakes that flattened entire villages in Herat a few weeks ago. WFP provides the returnee families with food and cash as they arrive at the border hungry and destitute, after registration by IOM, who is also assisting them. So far, we have assisted over 250,000 people, but we need to get to 1 million. We need to help them not only get through this winter, but also to help them rebuild their lives here. Sadly, however, at times of massive funding shortfalls, we are taking the assistance to the returnees' families from an already underfunded program that is increasingly insufficient to support the starving amongst the many hungry. Women-led households, children, the elderly, and people with disabilities continue to rely on our assistance. Without urgent additional funding, we will not be able to continue our support to these families, and yet what I saw was their desperate need.
Thank you very much indeed. Any question to WFP on these subjects in the room? I don't see any, or on the platform. Nick Bruce, New York Times.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I just wonder if you could sum up what was your funding requirement for this year, and what level of funding you already have, and what kind of additional funding you're trying to get to address this particular crisis. And I wonder also if you could just elaborate a little bit more on where these people are going. And if you've got 1 million coming back, what is the sort of logistical plan for accommodating these folks? Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So looking forward at our funding requirements, ultimately for WFP for the next 6 months, we would need around $950 million. We have some of that funding, but still face a shortfall of close to $850 million for the next 6 months. Usually winter is the highest period of need, and that's where we would need the greatest resources. For the returnees specifically, our funding requirements are around $28 million. That is both to support them at the border as they come in, but then also to provide support in areas of return. First, for the winter, where there aren't many livelihood opportunities and there would continue to need food assistance. And then in the springtime, where there may be some livelihood opportunities or as they get back on their feet to really help rebuild their lives. So that's more of the return package for returnees. And of course, many other UN agencies are also providing assistance, as well as other humanitarian, whether it is for water, for shelter, and for livelihoods. For where they're going, a large amount of the returnees would like to go to Jalalabad, to Kandahar. That's within Nangarhar and Kandahar provinces, but certainly also across the country. I was just even in Bamiyan a few days ago, and in there we're also seeing some returns, but it really spans across the country in places that are extremely harsh in the winter. So some of the returnees were telling me that for the next few months, they would not actually be able to get to their location of return because it's either will be cut off or it's too harsh, and they would look to go in the springtime. And then for WFP more broadly, I think the concern is we already have around 16 million people who are acutely hungry this winter. And we've seen in the last 2 winters how large-scale humanitarian assistance is required to really stave off catastrophe. And I'm afraid without those resources and without being able to get them during the winter in time, then we will not be able to achieve what we were able to achieve the last 2 winters.
Nick, you have a follow-up?
Yes, please, thanks. Just are most of these people coming back then essentially going back to family, to relatives, to previous contacts, or are they kind of in the wind just trying to start completely afresh? And one last question, and that is, to what extent are your funding constraints simply a reflection of the overall pressure on humanitarian funding globally? And to what extent do you think it's still affected for Afghanistan by international resistance to the Taliban government? Thank you.
Sure. So it's a combination, I think, for some, and I met with a woman who, she was born in Pakistan. She had never been to Afghanistan before. Well, some also do have relatives here in Afghanistan, so it's a combination. But many of them have been away for decades. I would say the majority of the people that I met had been outside of Afghanistan for 30 or more years. And so while they do have relatives and family connections, they don't have land necessarily, they don't have livelihoods, they don't have many members of their families to rely on, and even family members who want to help. And communities who want to help, their resources are extremely low. We know just from the food security situation that communities are not able to feed themselves at the moment. And so if we have 16 million people already acutely hungry, it would be very difficult for them to absorb the additional million coming back, even if they wanted to help. As for the funding constraints, there is a large, we know that we face unprecedented humanitarian needs across the world, with many other crises that are also severe and large. And so our donors, well, they have also still continued to express their confidence in funding WFP and food assistance, and that we are getting to the people most in need. We recognize and appreciate their support to the people of Afghanistan.
Thank you very much. Ravikant Devarakonda, our journalist from the Washington Trade Daily.
Thank you, Lisa. Actually, this is for the Indian publication, The Wire.
Sure, go ahead.
My question to is, Madam, can you share your notes on the current plight of these, more than 1 million refugees? I want to ask you a question about what is India's contribution? Afghanistan is a border almost to India. And India in the past has said that it, helps or it provides WFP, in bilateral kind of programs to overcome the kind of humanitarian crisis. Has India actually pitched in any way to help these refugees?
Thank you, Mrs. Lee.
Thank you. So India has been very generous this year in providing 60,000 metric tons of wheat to WFP's programming. And that assistance has gone across the country, most recently because some of that wheat came through the borders to our Herat office. We were able to respond directly to the earthquake. And so the assistance that we get as WFP really is then shared with those most in need, depending on where the location is. And India's assistance this year has been tremendous and very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. And I think Ishita is on the line. Maybe if you can think about distributing the notes. Antonio Broto is our correspondent from the Spanish news agency.
Thank you. My question is for OCHA concerning Gaza. I don't know if I have to wait.
We are not to that yet. We still have a few briefing points, Antonio. So I remember that you want to ask a question on that to OCHA, but for the moment, let's stay on Afghanistan. If there is any other question, and I don't see any. So Ishita is writing in the notes that she will distribute Mrs. Lee's notes to everyone soon. So thank you very much for coming and briefing our journalist, Mrs. Lee. Good luck with this very, very hard work for the winter coming. And I will now go to, unless I see an iPhone, I don't know who's there, but I would like to ask whoever journalist has written iPhone on his registration to just go out and put the name again. Otherwise, I won't be able to give you the floor. Sorry for that. So let's go now to our next announcements. The first one I would like to make concerns this incredibly important day, which is the 25th of November, International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. As you know, this is a moment where the international community comes together to remind ourselves and really everybody in the world that violence against women is the most pervasive breach of human rights worldwide, what the Secretary General has called a horrific violation of human rights, a public health crisis, and a major obstacle to sustainable development. We've distributed to you the message of the Secretary General for this day, which is dedicated to invest to the campaign, to the Unite campaign, which is called Invest to Prevent Violence Against Women and Girls. The Secretary General says this campaign calls on all of us to take action to support legislation and comprehensive policies that strengthen the protection of women's rights across the world, ramp up investment in prevention and support to women's rights organizations, listen to survivors, end impunity for perpetrators everywhere, stand with women activists and promote women leadership at every stage of decision making. And the Secretary General to conclude, let's stand up together and speak out. Let's build a world that refuses to tolerate violence against women anywhere, in any form, once and for all. And as you know, this International Day is the start of the 16 days campaign of activism against gender-based violence against women and girls. And this campaign goes from the 25th of November down to the 10th of December, which is Human Rights Day. It is really something we want to spotlight as we estimate that 736 million women, almost 1 in 3, have been subjected to physical or sexual violence, especially from partners and non-partners, sexual violence, or both, at least once in their lives. These are horrific figures. So to remember this at the UN in Geneva, we would like to invite you to 2 events. The first one is on Sunday, 26th of November, at the Bain de Paquis. There will be a ceremony, what we call the Cerimonie des Lanternes. I'm sure you've been there in the last years. It's organized by UN Women together with the Club Sœurs Optimistes et Zonta and the city of Geneva. There will be Osnat Loubrani, the director of UN Women Geneva, together with Nathalie Fontanet, the conseillère d'État, Alfonso Gomez, the mayor of Geneva, and we will put a lantern in the lake, an orange lantern for victims of feminicides. And on Monday, here at the Palais at 12 o'clock, we invite you to come at door 40, where we'll be planting seeds of flowers into a huge canvas that says no to gender-based violence. So we would really like to see you there. There will be a few speeches, but most importantly, we will show our solidarity with the victims of gender-based violence by planting flowers in this canvas. Please be with us on this occasion. And for the 15 days coming, the 16 days coming, keep talking about this scourge that we really have to finish with. Another international day which is coming, and which is also very prominent in our activities, is of course the 1st of December, when the international community comes together to commemorate World AIDS Day. And for this, we have with us Ben Phillips, the Director of Communication of UNAIDS, that is going to tell us about the plans for this International Day and the launch of World AIDS Report 2023. Ben.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining. We wanted to give you advance notice of the World AIDS Day report that will be being launched next week. Now, World AIDS Day is on the 1st of December, that's Friday, but the report for World AIDS Day is being launched on Tuesday. This is the cover of the report, Let Communities Lead. And the report will be launched on Tuesday in London at 13:30 GMT, so 14:30 European time, Geneva time, in Central Hall, Westminster. And journalists are able to join in person or online. And the links for joining online will be sent to you after this conference, so you'll have access to all of that. In addition, on that day, at the New York UN spokesperson's noon briefing, our Deputy Executive Director, Anjali Ashrekar, will also speak there to media in addition. Because the report is being published on the 28th of November, it's under embargo, but we are able to get to you the full report. We also have a press release, we also have a fact sheet, we have key messages, we have a whole range of assets that we're able to get to you. We can also organize for you to have interviews with key leaders in advance of that, in order to give you everything you need as a package. Just to share about what the key message will be is this. And we've heard today a lot of bleak news, and we know as well that many of the SDGs are really in trouble. With HIV, even though every minute a life is being lost to AIDS, even though every week 4,000 girls and young women become infected with HIV, and even though of the 39 million people living with HIV, 9.2 million are not yet on life-saving treatment. Even though there's all of those things, our analysis shows in this report that the end of AIDS as a public health crisis is possible by 2030. This is an achievable goal, and it would be an amazing success of international cooperation, of development, of health if we were able to do that. One of the challenges, one of the biggest challenges standing in the way of achieving that goal is that the most affected communities, people living with HIV or the people who are most vulnerable to HIV, they are not being involved, included as leaders in the HIV response in 3 different ways. Firstly, plans that are key, that affect their lives, are being made without them. Secondly, the resourcing for communities is incredibly low. And in fact, resourcing that's gone to civil society has actually shrunk as a share of the action. And often communities are expected to work for free, a task that no one else is ever assigned to do. And thirdly, we're seeing a growing wave of communities being put even under attack, either because they're from civil society or because they're from a marginalized group, for example, from the LGBTQI+ community. But when communities are enabled, supported, empowered, resourced, they will lead the world to the end of AIDS. So it's a tough situation, but we think this is ultimately an optimistic story, but an optimism of action, an action, a hope based on people taking action. In the report, you'll be able to read not just the data, the facts and figures, the examples. There are also 9 pieces, 9 really beautiful guest essays by frontline community leaders. So here is one, for example, about the extraordinary power of ordinary women. And what we wanted to do was to make this a UN report with a difference, using our platform, not just to show the data and analysis, but to show those first-person stories to help give voice to people. So there are 9 of those beautiful essays, which you'll also be able to read as part of that report. And anything you need to help you with your story, our team is there to help you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Then for that, any question in the room to UNAIDS? I go to the platform. Antonio, I guess this is the same question as before, so I will go to Paula de Praz.
Yes, hi. It was actually a question for Afghanistan. Sorry for the issue with the naming of who I was.
Paula, sorry, can you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, it was actually regarding Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's a little bit too late. I think Mrs. Lee is gone. Maybe you can just send your question to Ishita, sorry. Do you have any question for Ben before I go to the next one?
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. So Yuria Prelev, RIA Novosti.
Yes, thank you, Alessandra, for taking my question. I just want to know if we will receive by mail your report, and if we can use what you were saying during this briefing in our reports today, or if we have to wait for Thursday. Thank you.
We can get you, we will share with you an embargo site that you'll be able to access. And on that, so we'll email you the link of that embargo site. And on that embargo site, you'll be able to read the full report, including those guest essays by communities, fact sheets, press release, all the assets. So those will be there. In terms of what I've summarized, it would be helpful to wait to use it all on Tuesday. That also you'll have the chance on Tuesday as well to hear from key leaders. So at the press conference in London on Tuesday, you will hear from Andrew Mitchell, the UK Minister for International Development, from Winnie Byanyima, the Executive Director of UNAIDS, from Solange Baptiste, who's the Executive Director of International Treatment Coalition, and from Mercy Shibemba, who is a UK-based young activist living with HIV. So you'll be able to hear from them, and you'll have further information. So please wait for that. But all the materials, all the embargo materials, you can read today under embargo in order that you can prepare your story. Thank you.
Catherine Fiancon.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for this information. Would you be kind enough to send us under embargo the speech that will be delivered by the head of UNAIDS during the meeting? That would be very helpful for our stories. Thank you so much.
We can give you a lot of things, but not that. But you will find a fulsome set of materials. But for the speech by the executive director, you'll have to wait to hear it live, and it's the same for the speeches by all of the other eminent speakers as well. But we know that with these types of stories, because there's a need for kind of deep background, that's why we were keen to get all that other material, so that when you do hear the speakers, then you've got already the context, the facts and figures at your fingertips, and your story at least partially written at the time of the event.
And we're organizing interviews, as you said.
And we can organize interviews for you as well. Yes.
Thank you very much, Ben. I don't see other questions for you. So good luck with the launch of the report, and thank you for bringing maybe positive stories. So we really need that. Oh, Katrina has a follow-up. Sorry, Katrina.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Interview under embargo. Does it mean that we can get an interview of the executive director here in Geneva before? Did I understand well?
Yes, if you contact me, we will work to arrange an interview for you. Yes.
Okay, could you kindly send all your contact details in the chat? That would be helpful. Thank you so much.
Catherine, we can put Ben's contacts in the chat, but they are also on the list of spokesperson, if you already want them. But Solange is listening to us, and she can circulate the Ben's contacts for sure. Anyone else? Yes, Emma? No, it's not for Ben? Okay, so thank you very much, Ben. I go to my next speaker on my left. Catherine, bonjour. Tu as une annonce pour la CNUSED?
Oui, en fait, je vais répéter une invitation que nous vous avons faite déjà avec un communiqué le 15 novembre. La CNUSED va organiser du 4 au 8 décembre une semaine de débats et de rencontres sur l'économie numérique. Ce sera au CICG, donc de l'autre côté de la place des Nations, c'est à 2 pas. Et c'est gratuit, mais vous devez vous enregistrer. La gouvernance des plateformes, l'impact sur le développement économique de l'intelligence artificielle, les pratiques numériques respectueuses de l'environnement, l'accès des femmes à la création d'entreprises numériques et les inégalités que l'on observe dans ce domaine entre les pays, mais aussi à l'intérieur des économies, entre les différentes catégories de population. Tout cela se retrouvera dans le programme de cette semaine. L'économie numérique est un atout vers la réalisation des objectifs de développement durable. Son développement doit être inclusif et il doit être mené par l'ensemble des partenaires. On entend ici, bien sûr, le public, le secteur public et le secteur privé, au-delà de tous les acteurs de ce domaine. La semaine, en quelques chiffres, ce seront autour de 3000 participants en provenance d'environ 130 pays et il y aura plus de 150 sessions que vous pouvez découvrir en ligne. Je vous invite donc à vous enregistrer et à nous rejoindre au CICG. Vous avez la liste des participants sur le site. Le lien sera dans mes notes qui seront transmises en anglais. Et je suis à votre disposition pour vous connecter avec ces participants. Par exemple, des grands acteurs du secteur comme DHL, comme Microsoft, à des niveaux très hauts, de vice-président ou de président. Également, Mozilla sera représenté. Je ne vais pas faire de la pub à tous les acteurs de l'économie numérique, mais enfin, c'est assez rare d'avoir ce type d'interlocuteur à un même endroit et un certain nombre aussi de ministres et de représentants des Nations Unies de très haut niveau, comme l'envoyé du secrétaire général sur la technologie, Amandeep Singh Gill, Dima Alayaya, qui est secrétaire général de la Digital Cooperation Organization. Ces noms étaient dans le communiqué. J'ai ici sous les yeux le nom de la ministre de la Communication et des Technologies de la Tunisie, Nizar Ben Nedji, Henri Puna, qui est secrétaire général of the Pacific Island Forum, et puis d'autres qui sont sur le site de la semaine de l'économie numérique. Voilà, e-week en anglais. Voilà, je reste à votre disposition et j'espère vous y voir, donc du 4 au 8. Merci.
Merci Catherine. Question à la CNUSET dans la salle? Alors, je donne la parole à Yuri.
Oui, merci Catherine pour ces informations. Je voulais savoir s'il était possible de passer par toi pour préparer des interviews en marge de l'événement qui sera organisé avec les différentes personnes qui viennent, ou s'il fallait plutôt envoyer un mail à ces sociétés elles-mêmes. Merci.
Non, vous pouvez passer par moi, je relayerai, je redistribuerai les demandes aux personnes qui seront présentes et on organisera tout ça d'ici là. Pas de problème. Envoyez-moi vos demandes. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Catherine. D'autres questions pour la CNUSET? J'en vois pas. Donc, merci beaucoup. Antonio, je t'ai pas oublié avec la question sur Gaza, mais on a encore 2 speakers, pas des moindres. Et donc, j'ai le plaisir de... I'm going to switch back to English. I'm pleased to give the floor to Claire and to Christian, who are going to tell you a few things about their programs for the upcoming COP28. I don't know, maybe Claire, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I've got a rare bit of sunlight in my office, and so it's that's why the screen's not very good. Yes, morning everybody. I will be sending out a media advisory either today or at the very latest on Monday with details of the World Meteorological Organization activities at the UN Climate Change Conference, COP28, which, as we all know, starts next week in Dubai. Of, I think, most interest to you will be our activities on the state of the climate reports, and we're also doing quite a lot on the Early Warnings for All initiative. So on the 30th of November, we will be releasing the provisional statement on the state of the global climate in 2023. There will be a press conference at COP with our Secretary General, Professor Tallis. It will be live streamed, and so if journalists in Geneva want to follow it, you should be able to by the UN FCCC live stream. Again, in the media advisory, we'll give you details, but for your planning now, it's at 11:30 Geneva time. That is on the 30th. We do expect a lot of media interest in it. We'll send out material under embargo at the start of next week. As I said, there are a number of quite high-level events on the Early Warnings for All initiative, and again, we will be sending out regular updates, regular press releases on that. Then another report I think you will be interested. Oh, and sorry, for the State of the Climate report, the press conference is given in Dubai by Professor Tallis. The reports coordinator, Dr. Omar Badour, who most of you know, he will actually be staying in Geneva. So if you need any interviews in English, French, or Arabic, please let me know, and we can certainly facilitate. The main event will be Dubai, but we can facilitate contacts with journalists here with Dr. Badour. The other report I think you'll be interested in, and obviously there are a lot of reports at COP. We've got a report on the state of the global climate 2011 to 2020. So it's taking a decadal look at it. We'll be giving figures on the ice, melting of ice over the decade, the sea level rise over the decade, looking at temperatures, ocean heat, other factors. I read the report yesterday to start writing the press release, and I felt like crying. But anyway, so we will send you again press release on that. The report launch is on the 5th of December, Again, you will get materials under embargo. Main launch will be in Dubai, but again, Dr. Badour will be in Geneva if you need interviews in Geneva. So that's that. As I said, we'll send you the media advisory later today. For any of you who are at COP, the WMO, along with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, with the UAE's National Meteorological Service, and with a Mary Foundation, which is a South American philanthropic foundation, we do have a pavilion. So if anybody is in Dubai, please feel free to come and see us. Everybody's got their my WhatsApp number, and so if you are there, you need interviews, just get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, and before we give the floor for questions, maybe I'll ask Christian to also update us on the COP, and then I'll go to the journalist. Christian.
Yeah, exactly, and thank you, Alessandra, and thank you, Claire. That's the perfect lead into it. On Monday, you already got the announcement as the Climate Health and WHO at COP28 briefing. It will be at 2 o'clock Geneva time. It's a virtual briefing with Maria Nera and others. It's on the COP and what to expect there from the presidency and so on and so forth. So a full briefing on the expectations for this Monday, 2 o'clock, and on Thursday at 3 o'clock, we'll have the WHO's World Malaria Report for 2023. Certainly an interesting one to watch. The announcement hasn't gone out yet. That will come Monday. And also on Monday, you then in the afternoon, evening, will have access to an embargoed Canto site with all the relevant material to prep beforehand. So again, the briefing on Thursday afternoon, announcement still to come with the details for the embargoed site for Monday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And since we are speaking about the COP28, just let me add that our department will also make available a page in 6 languages, which will be updated daily to feature the latest UN news, a live blog for the opening days, which in fact is going to be prepared by our colleague from Geneva, Dominika Tomaszewska. And then we will also have links to live streams, press material, and other material related to the COP. So I will invite you also to have a look at this page for updates on the COP. So let me see, because I see Mohammed has raised his hand. I don't know if it's about these announcements, Mohammed, or if you're also waiting for Gaza.
Yeah, I am also waiting for Gaza, Alessandra.
Okay, so let's see. I see in the room a couple of hands. Is that for Claire or Christian? Go ahead, Ben.
Yes, so question to WMO. If we have requests for interviews in Dubai in person, are you still the focal point? So do we have to write directly to you? All right.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yes. Right.
And also, and will both of the Secretary Generals, like the actual one and the next one, will be there, or is it only Petri Talas?
Okay, so write to me, send me a WhatsApp or a message on the phone. I will be there for the entire duration. Brigitte Parrin, who is Chief of WMO Communications, she will be there for the first week. But as I said, if you've got media requests, come to me first. Our Secretary General, Professor Talas, he will be there for the first week. And then the Deputy Secretary General, Elena Manankova, will take over from him. The incoming Secretary General, Celeste Saulo, will not be at COP, but she starts her position here at the beginning of January, and so very early in the new year. I hope I hope to have a press conference with her.
Thank you, Claire. Other questions on COP? I don't see any. So thank you very much. Christian, stay with us because I think there are a few questions for you. But I'll go now to Antonio, who had a question for Jens, who has reached me on the podium. Join me.
Thank you very much. So my question is if OCHA or other humanitarian agencies have any updated information on the aid entering in Gaza now that the ceasefire has started, and also if you have any details about the participation of Red Cross in the transport of released hostages and prisoners.
Thank you, Antonio, and good morning, everyone. The United Nations can confirm that, as I speak, trucks with humanitarian supplies continues to cross into Gaza through the Rafah crossing point. We hope the agreement between Israel and Hamas, now in force, will bring respite to the people of Gaza and Israel, and some relief to the hostages and detainees who will be released, and to their families. We hope it allows grieving families to honor their dead and bury them with dignity. And we hope that this humanitarian pause leads to a longer-term humanitarian ceasefire for the benefit of the people of Gaza, Israel, and beyond. We will, from OCHA, continue to update you on developments, including daily convoy movements from Egypt, as we have done daily since the start of the escalation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will recall that on the 22nd of November, the Secretary General has also, of course, welcomed the agreement reached by Israel and Hamas with the mediation of Qatar and supported by Egypt and the United States. He said this was an important step, of course, in the right direction, but much more needs to be done, and the United Nations will mobilize all its capacity to support the implementation of the agreement and maximize its positive impact on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Emma, just 1 second. Mohammed was there, I think, asking a question too. So, Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you, Alessandra. My question for WHO, I think Christian is over there. The Israel army detained Abu Silmiye, who is the director of El Shifa Hospital, yesterday. There is currently no information on his whereabouts. Do you think it is acceptable to detain a healthcare worker in Gaza? And do you have any information where he is and how is it about? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed. Very important question indeed. But I will have to refer to a statement that we're about to release sometime later today, which will have more details, the circumstances, whatever we know about this topic. Thanks.
Thank you, Christian. I'll go to Amana.
Thanks a lot. One for Jens and one for Christian as well. Do you think the 200 trucks a day that Egypt is saying we should expect during the truce is possible? And if so, how? Is there any indication from your side that the process for aid entering Gaza has been simplified? And can you get to the north? And for Christian, it's sort of related, but more broadly, do you think you can use the truce to evacuate hospitals? I can see that the Red Crescent is doing that. Is that your plan? And what can you say about your cooperation with the Gaza Health Ministry? They've said that they've suspended cooperation with the WHO over the issue raised by my colleague, the alleged detention of hospital staff from Al Shifa. Thanks very much.
Jens, you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Emma. We will report on humanitarian aid, a number of trucks, once they have arrived inside Gaza. Yesterday, we had 80 trucks with humanitarian relief that crossed the border. There was some 68,000 liters of fuel in addition to the 80 trucks with relief. So we do it once it's established inside Gaza. The pipeline is quite long for relief, and parts of it a lot of it, in fact, is beyond our control and has to do with verification of the consignments. In terms of the north, we have said consistently that we need access across the Gaza Strip, especially in the north. That's where the damage and the humanitarian needs are the greatest. So we continue to call for access to reach all parts of Gaza.
Indeed,
Yeah, thank you. Now we're unmuted. Well, first, let me say we absolutely welcome, of course, this humanitarian pause, but exactly, we do need more, and we would hope that it extends into maybe even a ceasefire. But on your questions, Emma, thank you. The circumstances of this arrest and everything which follows, again, to be expected in a statement later today. On the evacuations, yes, we're working on further evacuations from hospitals as soon as possible. To remind you that on 22 November, together with the Palestine Red Crescent Society, a WHO led joint UN mission evacuated 151 patients, relatives, and health workers, accompanying them from Al-Shifa Hospital in northern Gaza. This was undertaken specifically following requests from health authorities and hospital officials in Gaza. That's really important. It was the third mission to Al-Shifa carried out by WHO and partners in less than a week. And during this mission, the team evacuated 73 severely ill or injured patients, including 18 dialysis patients, 26 patients with serious spinal injuries, 8 patients with severe chronic conditions, 2 in need of critical care, and further 19 patients in wheelchairs. So these patients were transported in 14 ambulances supplied and staffed by the Palestine Red Crescent Society, 2 buses, and together with 8 health workers and 70 family members accompanying them. Now, we're extremely concerned about the safety of the estimated 100 patients and health workers remaining at Al-Shifa. And due to the limited time that the mission members were able to spend in the hospital and the urgency of moving the most critical, it was difficult to determine exactly how many remained. So that's on Al-Shifa. On other hospitals, we named the Indonesian and the Al-Ali requests came, and we're working also on details, more updates to come during the day.
Emma, did you re-rate? No, it's okay. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Sorry, Yuri.
Yes, thank you. I have one question for OCHA and one for WHO. Christian, at first, because your teams were in Al-Shifa, have you seen any evidence that injured people had white phosphorus injuries? Because it was something that was allegedly used by Israel forces in the northern part of Gaza. And to Jens, just to know if you have some possibilities to help the people that are under the rubble in Gaza, if you can bring any trucks that can free them from there, or at least to find the bodies that are there. And if it's not possible, how do you think and when do you think it will be possible to do that thing?
Let me start as it's quick. No, Yuri, I've not seen any evidence, any report or any evidence of that so far.
Good to know. Jens.
Having been in such a situation that they get medical care. So that is, of course, a high priority for us.
Thank you, Christian. sorry, Christian, if I may, Yuri has a follow-up, sorry.
Maybe I can say before the audio was off, so we couldn't hear Jens, most of what Jens was saying.
Okay, so maybe Jens, you want to repeat what you were saying, then Yuri, you can ask your follow-up, and then we'll go to Christian.
Yeah, I was emphasizing the fact that it is very important to get fuel in to be able to operate any machinery that will be required to get people out of the rubble. We see that in all kinds of situations where you have massive infrastructural damage and collapse. Secondly, I just want to mention that we will, of course, report on anything that does happen in our daily situation reports. It is a very, I think we can all agree, a volatile, intense situation right now. So please bear with us that we don't jump into announcing this, that, and the other, but wait until we can reasonably say that this has happened. That is both in the interest of correct reporting by us, by you, and certainly in the interest of the people we are trying to help, not to raise any expectations that we may or may not be able to deliver on. Thank you.
Extremely important. Thank you, Jens. So I think Yuri just raised his hand because he couldn't hear your answer. There were
Yes,
quite a few
that was the fact.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. So let's go to Christian. Christian Ulrich.
Here we go. Thank you, Jens. I'm sorry, I have to squeeze you also again, following up on Emma. You have been calling for access for the last 6 weeks, but something must have changed in the last 3 days when these negotiations were going on the pause. So the question is, do you have guarantees at this point, negotiated over the last 3 days, to access the north with relief items? That doesn't need to, I wonder, we don't need to wait until it has actually happened. The question is, do you have agreed access to the north at this point in time? Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. We have what you have. We have the agreement that has been made and announced by Qatar and commented on by other parties to the agreement. It is not a UN agreement. That is what we have. And that is what we work on.
Thank you, Mercy. Imogen.
Yeah, morning. You're not going to like this because it's the same question, but I'm still curious. The agreement says there's access to Gaza, all of Gaza, as how I read it. But there's also instructions from Israel to Gazans not to go north. So I'm still curious. You don't have a definitive answer whether you will be able to deliver aid to the north or not. Is that what I'm to understand? You don't know yet.
Thank you, Imogen. We have, of course, seen what the Israelis have been saying about movements, also about movements of convoys and so on and so forth. We proceed on the basis of the hope and the expectation that we will reach people in need where they are. Whether that happens, obviously, I cannot tell you now. But the operation, of course, wants to see that happen. That is the whole purpose of it from our point of view. So we will continue to update you as information is available and confirmed.
Jamie, same question in another way or another question?
You bet. You bet, Alessandra. Jens,
You just said that you know what we know. So does that mean that there's no coordination at all going on between the United Nations and the various parties in terms of how this is going to play out? I mean, basically the question I have is it's similar to Christiana's, but for weeks there have been a certain number of trucks that have been getting into Gaza, right? And the question really is becoming, what, if anything, is giving you hope that there may be more trucks that may be able to get into Gaza? Is there anything, or are you simply in the dark, as you seem to suggest, beyond what the public statements have been made? Is there no community? Is Mr. Griffiths not talking to anybody at this level? Thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
We've said since before the 7th of October, we are in daily contact with the Israelis and all parties, because before this, of course, there were movements into Gaza that dropped, it stopped, in actual fact, for 2 weeks. Then it was restarted on the 21st of October. So we're in constant contact at a working level, not least through the humanitarian coordinator for OPT, based in East Jerusalem. So I said that we know what you know, but we may know more than you know. I don't want to go into a tit for tat. What I can say is that, of course, we are as I just mentioned, negotiating this. The hope that we have, and I think I mentioned the word hope 3 times when I gave you the first reaction, is that this agreement that has been made, which includes a humanitarian pause, which we have been asking for as a minimum for us to deliver, that pause is respected, that it enables us to reach the people who need us, and that it will be extended into an actual humanitarian ceasefire in the long run.
Robin.
Thank you. The fuel that's going into the Gaza Strip, how is that going to be managed? Where is it going to go? And are there plans for further fuel shipments into the Gaza Strip? Thank you.
The fuel that goes into Gaza for us is in UN custody at all times. It is distributed through UNRWA, who is the entity who has the distribution network and knows how to do it, because they've done it for years. So that is about as much as I can say. We have had agreement for some time now by the Israelis to allow for entry of fuel. That's why we in our daily reporting update on that. And as you will have noted, not in number of trucks, because that doesn't make much sense, but in liters of fuel.
Thank you. Jamie, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I did, Chest. I just wanted to make sure. Jens, that was very important what you said, and I appreciate what you said. But can you tell us, I guess the really most basic question is, what, if anything, has changed based on this ceasefire arrangement? I mean, in other words, a lot of people think, oh, this means a pause and there's going to be possible hostage/prisoner exchange. But in terms of aid getting in, you said you have hope, but is it more than just hope? Is there actual concrete foundation to let you have that hope? I mean, a lot of us hope for world peace. We all hope for a lot of things. But is there anything in the information that you have seen that makes you believe that there will be greater aid shipments into Gaza based on this pause that is happening right now?
Look, Jamie, it's not to give us some relief to Jens, but I just wanted to answer your question with what was said about our colleagues of the spokesman's office. We are working out arrangements on the ground. We're trying to make sure that this particular pause means that we are able to expand our operation. So we are really going to do as much. It's not a question of hope, it's a question of working on the ground at all levels. We are really trying to do whatever we can to bring these humanitarian goods and into Gaza. And so it's not just a hope, it's a working hope, I would say. Antonio, again.
Thank you. My question is about another topic. It's for WHO.
Sorry, Antonio, if it's not on Gaza, just 1 second, because I see Gabriela has her hand up and I think it's on Gaza, and then I'll let you ask your question to Christian. Sorry. Gabriela, is that on Gaza?
Yes, Alexandra. Thank you very much, Alessandra. Jens and Alessandra, Mr. Netanyahu criticized that United Nations is very slow doing their job. Are you aware of these declarations? What do you think? What can you say about that? Thank you so much.
Gabriela, we don't comment statements from member states. Of course, they've got the right to say what they want to say, but I think the only thing I can say is that look at the work that has been done by UNRWA, by the the humanitarian coordinator in the OPT, by all the by WHO, by all the agencies that are working in the field. And as Jens hinted to, it's not starting on the 7th of October. We've been there for a long time. So I think that is what we want to underline. Antonio, you had a question for Christian, but it's not on Gaza. I think there are no other questions on Gaza. At least I can't see any on the platform. So I'll go to you now. And to Christian.
Thank you. So it's about the surge of cases of pneumonia and other respiratory diseases in China. WHO has already published a press release this week saying that you have requested information about all this to Chinese authorities. So I wonder if you have had any answer. And also, I wonder if the recommendations that you have published for China concerning this situation may be extended to other countries. Thank you.
Christian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Antonio. So indeed, last night, late last night, we issued the disease outbreak news on the upsurge of respiratory illnesses among children in northern China. It's a lengthy disease outbreak news, so I will not go through it all, but since mid-October 2023, WHO has been monitoring data from Chinese surveillance systems that have been showing an increase in respiratory illness in children in northern China. And at a press conference on 13 November, China's National Health Commission reported on a nationwide increase in the incidence of this respiratory disease, predominantly affecting children. Now, this was follow up on 22 November. WHO identified media and ProMed reports about the clusters of this undiagnosed pneumonia in children's hospitals in Beijing. Let me jump to the risk assessment, which is maybe the most interesting, what you're waiting for right now. And again, I'm referring you to the full statement we sent last night. In the current outbreak of respiratory illnesses, the reported symptoms are common to several respiratory diseases. And as of now, at the present time, Chinese surveillance and hospital systems report that the clinical manifestations are caused by known pathogens in circulation. Mycoplasma pneumonia is a common respiratory pathogen and a common cause of pediatric pneumonia and is readily treated with antibiotics. China has an influenza-like illnesses and severe acute respiratory infections sentinel surveillance system. Since mid-October, China has implemented enhanced surveillance systems for respiratory illness, covering a broad spectrum of respiratory viruses and bacteria, including Mycoplasma pneumonia. There's limited detailed information available to fully characterize the overall risk of these reported cases. However, due to the arrival of the winter season, the increasing trend in respiratory illness is expected. Co-circulation of respiratory viruses may increase the burden on healthcare facilities, according to surveillance data reported to WHO's FluNet and published by the National Influenza Center in China was above, the level was above usual levels for this time of the year and increasing in the northern provinces. Influenza detections were predominantly A, H3N2 and the B Victoria lineage viruses. So this was very technical now, but again, I will send this to the notes because it's out of the risk assessment, and happy for you to follow this up further.
Thank you very much. And I see John has a question.
Yes, good morning, Christian. Yes, a follow-up on Antonio's question. Which other WHO member countries have seen a spike in this pneumonia largely affecting children? And have you received the samples from the Chinese authorities that you had requested? Thank you.
So I'm not aware of any other countries, but based on the available information, WHO recommends that people in China follow the measures to reduce the risk of respiratory illnesses, which include recommended vaccines against influenza, COVID-19, and other respiratory pathogens as appropriate. And the regular advice is keeping distance from people who are ill, staying home when ill, and so on and so forth, getting tested, regular hand washing, and so on and so forth. WHO does not recommend any specific measures for travelers to China. In general, persons should avoid travel while experiencing symptoms themselves, suggested of respiratory illnesses, if possible. And in case of symptoms during or after travel, travelers are encouraged to seek medical attention and share the history with their healthcare provider. WHO further advises against the application of any travel or trade restrictions based on the current information available on this event. So very standard and regular recommendations, nothing out of the norm. I'm not aware now of the details of what was shared, but this information was put together in the disease outbreak news yesterday, but happy to follow up with you individually about the details, what and when was sent.
Thank you very much. I don't see other questions for Christian. So thank you very much, Christian. Just two last announcements. First of all, I've been asked to give you an update about, apparently many of you need some information on how to organize the end of the year. We've already told you about the conservative measures for cost reductions that have been implemented at the Palais. So this end of the year will be a little bit different from the others. As you know, we have implemented, I mean, you've seen escalators now being stopped, and the time of the day at the Palais has been now moved from 8 o'clock in the morning to 7 p.m. So there are a number of things that you have already seen, but one of the measures we are planning to implement is a generalized closure from the 20th of December to the 7th of January. So the Palais des Nations will be closed during those days. It's not a total closing. If you need to come and work, we have already foreseen to make an exception for journalists, of course, but the building will be closed, and we will be teleworking from home during these days. This means also that we will hold the press briefing of the 22nd of December and of the 5th of January virtual only. So we will hold it, but only virtual, while as usual on the 26th and 29th of December, there will be no briefing unless there is something that happens. And we, of course, hope there will be a peaceful period and we will not need to rush to the office to brief you. But as usual, the 26th and 29th, there will be no briefing, and the 22nd of December and 5th of January, it will only be virtual. We are also putting together the usual list of spokespersons who will be on call for you during this holiday period, so that you will always know whom to talk to if you have questions during this time. I think you've also received an information from my colleagues on the renewal of the annual accreditations. We'll start a little bit later this year. As you know, we have two big events coming up in December, so we are very busy with accreditation for those events, but we will open the renewal of accreditation, if I'm not wrong, on the 11th of December. Don't worry about the time. We will have the time to renew your accreditations and your badges. Every badge for everybody who is accredited annually will be valid until the 31st of January. So there is no reason to rush into that. We will do it as usual, try to do it as efficiently as possible. And then my last point is on the committees. The Committee Against Torture is closing today. As you know, the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination concludes this morning the review of Germany, and they are going to examine South Africa, Bulgaria, and Vietnam in the next days. And the Committee on the Protection of the Rights of all migrant workers and members of their families is going to open its next session, the 37th, on Monday at Palais Wilson. And the countries they review will be Uruguay, Kyrgyzstan, and Sao Tome and Principe. And that is what I had for you. Okay, I see some hands up. Is there any in the room before I go to the platform? No? Okay, Catherine, you have the floor.
Yes, Alessandra, thank you so much. If you already know, when will you be able to send the list of spokespersons that will be in charge during that season period? The second thing is, as there is a war going on in Gaza and Israel, I suppose that we'll be able to reach everyone on a very easy base during those holidays, and that if anything important occurs, that there will be press conferences, and that we won't be obliged to run and call everywhere and disturb you or the person that will be in charge during Christmas and New Year. And I'd like to kindly request if Eunice could make sure that the security people are aware about the validity of our badges, because the gentlemen that are working in the Palais for a long time, they know us and they know about your policy, but the newcomers don't know anything. And often we stopped by the new staff, and because they have a problem of internal communication for certain events. Thank you so much, Alessandra.
Thank you. Okay, let me take your question one by one. First of all, the list of spokespersons should be ready at the end of the month. I think we have given a deadline of the 28th of November to get all the names and contact details. So you will have it at the beginning of December, end of November, beginning of December at the latest. I would say maybe, the time for Solange to compile all the information that we receive. On the issue of the conflict, you said we have a conflict in Gaza. You're absolutely right. There are also other conflicts, as we have outlined and briefed you about today, and many more. So definitely, we are absolutely open to the fact that there might be press conferences during this period of closing of the Palais. We are already in agreement with our colleagues of the technical services that if needed, of course, the press room will be available for press conferences. That's not an issue. And as you remember, Catherine, in the past, it has happened that unfortunately we had to do some urgent communications and press conferences during the holiday period, and we did that. So we will do. And your last point about security, yes, of course, and the communication we have made in writing, and I have done today, it's of course agreed with security, and we will make sure that this message is quite well known by the various security officers. John.
Yes, just a little observation to help in the economizing of resources in the Palais. After 8 o'clock, the Peace Gate is closed, but there's dozens of lights still switched on there. It would be helpful to switch them off and at least have some lights on the left side of the walkway where there is not even a light in the crossing. So that's just a suggestion. And secondly, yes. Yeah, we have had in the past, if I recall, 208, 209, the war in Gaza was during the holiday break, and also the tsunami in 2004. So yes, somehow holiday seasons come with a lot of tragedy sometimes.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the observation on the lights. That gives me the opportunity to remind everybody we need your contribution, we need your support for cost reduction and energy saving measures. So we really encourage everyone as much as possible to use natural lighting. Turn off your unused electronics. Of course, use the stairs when it's possible. It's also good for health. And of course, at the end of the day, turn off the lights. It's not always possible. It's not always easy. Sometimes there are people who are indeed staying late and don't do it. But I know for sure that after we have all gone, security goes by and turn them off. But I take your suggestion about the external light, and I'll bring it to my colleagues because this, yes, it is useful. Thank you very much. I don't see any other question. And of course, all this we will inform you in writing, and it may evolve, as we said, but you will have all the information as we go. I wanted to say this today because some of your colleagues and some of you have asked for information about the end of the year, and that is why I'm giving you this update. So thank you very much for following this long briefing, and bon appétit, bon weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday. Thank you.